So, wow, scientists dancing. Not sure that's a good idea. But anyone who saw me noticed that I didn't really dance. And I must apologize, I haven't just drunk an enormous glass of orange juice. I'm trying to grow a ginger moustache. So I was on an airplane a while back, around the time that Steve Jobs died. And I'm sitting on a plane, and I'm in my seat, and I'm looking across, I'm bored looking across, and there's like this 6-year-old kid. And we're there on a plane with a little screen in front of us, and this 6-year-old kid is going up to this screen and going like this on the plane, trying to expand the screen. And it really made me think. So suddenly you realize, wow. So Steve Jobs and the Apple Corporation, what they did was fundamentally change our expectation of a screen. What is a screen? It used to be something you sit in front of like this and stare at. But now it's a portal. It's the way we get into information. It's the thing we expect to interact with. We expect to be able to use and manipulate and do things with. And what if we had that same expectation for other things in our life? What if we expected what if we had an expectation or different expectations for perhaps larger things in the world like industry? What if we had an expectation that industry could occur, manufacturing could occur, not without impact on our environment, but with having a beneficial impact on our environment? So think about a manufacturing facility for, say, gases and polymers that requires energy and chemicals, and the product of that manufacture is actually beneficial for our world, our environment. That thing's called a tree, because that's what a tree does. A tree converts some gases, energy, and chemicals into polymers. That's the stuff that makes up the tree. And gases, oxygen that we breathe. And when we think about that tree, we don't think it'd be really good if that tree could economize on the amount of leaves that it makes, or it could minimize its flower production, and that would be beneficial. We actually think it would be beneficial if that tree produced more leaves and more flowers. And therefore, if you could have an industry that was beneficial to its environment, it would make social sense, it would make environmental sense, and it would make commercial sense. Because it'd be good if it made more stuff because it's beneficial, And so what if our expectation of industry that it was more like a tree? Now the challenge is, of course, that we've started the whole thing a little bit arse about face. We've figured out how to make stuff. We haven't figured out how necessarily to usefully use the byproducts of that manufacture. 85 million. 85 million is the number of barrels of oil that our Earth consumes every day. We use 85 million, big number. And most of that, of course, is for fuels, some for chemicals, but the combustion of the products of oil refining obviously release CO2 into the atmosphere. The accumulation of CO2 is generally regarded as a very, 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 very bad thing for human health, for the environment, for economies, so on and so forth. And today, the only mature process that we have to produce fuels and chemicals in a way that is to some degree beneficial to the environment is by consuming food resources. So we can make fuels and chemicals by fermenting sugars made from sugarcane or from corn into fuels like ethanol or other chemicals. But the problem is corn is a food, sugarcane is a food, and while today we have 7 billion people on Earth, in future we're going to have 8 billion people. By future I mean about in 20 years, and in 20 years the demand for oil is predicted to go up by 40%. So not only is our demand for fuels and chemicals rising very rapidly, the number of us is rising very rapidly, and therefore the need for more food is rising very rapidly. And so the idea of using food as a resource to make fuels and chemicals doesn't really add up, Not good. So therefore what we're thinking is we need really to think about an alternative resource from which we can produce fuels and chemicals. And that was really the kind of the founding of LanzaTech. We started thinking, okay, so what would be really this is the bar conversation. So most of it was kind of slurry, and the dancing may have been a bit better. We started thinking, what was the ideal resource? And the ideal resource from which to make sustainable fuels and chemicals is a resource that's available today, is abundant, because you're not talking about making diamonds, you're making fuels, which we're using 85 million barrels of a day, so it has to be available in high volumes. It has to be point source. What does that mean? It means that it's available in a single location, not having to transport the stuff around a lot, because that costs money. It has to be low value. Again, energy needs to be cheap. Otherwise, it's only available to those people with a lot of money. And of course, it has to be. You can't. It shouldn't be a food, because there's lots of us. And you realise what you're talking about is waste products. You realise that really what we're talking about is making fuels and chemicals from waste. Industrial waste, the waste from society, municipal solid waste, so the stuff we put in landfills, or the waste from agriculture. And all of these wastes can be represented as gases, carbon monoxide and hydrogen-containing gases. So industry produces a lot of gases. Municipal waste can be converted into gases, as can agricultural residues. So we need a way of converting gases, carbon monoxide, it's not a toxic flammable gas, and hydrogen, only flammable, into fuels and chemicals. So where are you going to find that? Where are you going to find something that converts these toxic flammable gases into fuels and chemicals? Now, to find that, you have to go on a bit of a history lesson. So here's a rough history of the Earth. Yeah. So we'll go back 4.8 billion years. Earth formed. Shortly thereafter, I mean, the Earth is a pretty unpleasant place at this point. And just to put it in perspective, the dinosaurs sort of came around 400 million years ago, and then they disappeared again about 100 million years ago, and we came around 60 million years ago, and we've sort of been buggering the place up ever since. But that also describes that all those pictures you've seen of people riding dinosaurs probably didn't happen. But over the course of that period, the Earth had effectively 3 different atmospheres. It started off with an atmosphere that was very reduced. It was full of hydrogen, carbon monoxide, and methane, and carbon dioxide. It was then full of carbon dioxide, and then slowly plants evolved and oxygen filled the atmosphere, and then people came along and were slowly trying to bring it back to the carbon dioxide. But life began around 3.8 billion years ago, around the time that the Earth's atmosphere was very reduced. So there was a lot of carbon monoxide, there was a lot of hydrogen around. Life began in the context of reduced flammable toxic gases, the kind of stuff that we want to convert. Life began in hydrothermal vents, doesn't really matter where, and they look something like this. And what's interesting, therefore, is life began using carbon monoxide and hydrogen-like gases as the sole source of carbon and energy to perpetuate itself. And so you can see, yeah, hydrothermal vent, yeah, looks like something that one might find in China today. So this is where we started. This is really the trigger for us for a process. Can we take something, a chemistry that evolved at that time, and use it to convert the resources that we've identified into fuels and chemicals? And that's effectively what we've done at LanzaTech. We've taken a bacteria and shown that we can feed it carbon monoxide and hydrogen containing gases, and those gases can come from manufacturing, like steel manufacturing processes, and we've indeed connected our process up to a steel mill and shown that you can take a gas that comes as a byproduct of steel making and turn it into a fuel. And that fuel can be used in cars, or you can turn it into a chemical, and that chemical can be used for polymers, etc. So it's a process that has the potential to produce hundreds of billions of gallons of fuel a year. And it uses a very, very ancient chemistry, perhaps the most ancient chemistry that we have on Earth. Here's a picture of a plant that we built in China. This is just a demonstration. It's not a commercial plant by any means. It's a plant, the steel mill's here. This is the one day that you could see the sun, so we took a picture. We have our bacteria in this big fermenter here, and we feed it gas that comes from steel making. The bacteria love that stuff, so they eat it, they spit out a bunch of ethanol. We then recover the ethanol and we store it up, and we can sell it for fuels and chemicals. So the advantage of a gas fermenting process is the range of different resources that you can use ultimately to produce these fuels and chemicals. You can think about industrial processes. You can think about gases like the natural gas produced, sort of biogas that's produced from the degradation of waste. You can think about municipal solid waste and so on and so forth. In future, we're actually thinking we can use electrons and CO2, so electricity and CO2 to produce fuels and chemicals. So in that sense, it's quite exciting. Oh, sorry. So we started the company, so a bit of a history on the company. We started the company in 2005. Now, as you can imagine, if you want to go into the fuels and chemicals business, you need a few dollars. It's going to be expensive. You've got to build a big plant. So we set about raising money, and we raised our initial round. We started off actually getting money from local investors here. Stephen Tyndall from the Warehouse, through his investment fund, invested in our company. He's probably I guess New Zealand's only, in my view, real venture capitalist who invests in local businesses. But really, you get to the point where New Zealand's not enough in terms of the funding resources that are available. So we went offshore. We went to Silicon Valley. There we raised $12 million from a venture capital fund. In total, we've raised around $100 million to date. We probably need some more money to keep going. In order to build like world-class fuel and chemical plants, you need a significant amount of cash. But it's been a very exciting journey to date. We employ around 140 people globally, about 80 here locally, mostly scientists and engineers. One thing we've done extremely aggressively and extremely deliberately is to patent our inventions. And the reason we've done that is because we have investors, and investors want to understand exactly what it is they own. But then also what we've done that so that we can apply our technology with freedom later on. So we've seen the technology grow from a test tube, basically, which was where we were in 2005, to plants that operate at steel mills. We've got a pilot plant at a steel mill here in New Zealand, in Glenbrook. And that's very exciting. I mean, from a scientist's perspective, it's very rare that scientists get to see something that they're working on actually, amount to something. But then we also have to get into the business of selling our process, and so we have to justify why this is a good thing to do. And so we put together an economic case. This one's for steel manufacture, and what we're able to show is that if you're a steel mill, the only option you have for your waste gases is to effectively burn them, make electricity, and by capturing those gases and convert them into fuels, you make twice as much money because fuels are inherently more valuable than electricity. So economically good, but where's the market? Market's in China. 50% of world steel today is made in China. Conveniently, 50% of world steel is consumed in China. So you're on a plane to Shanghai pretty quickly. And doing business in China, well, my uncle's up. Doing business in China is, let's hope he doesn't Skype me. Is an interesting and scary process. If you get away without eating an insect, an amphibian, or some other unusual creature, you're good. You do a lot of drinking, so very tough on the liver. And you find yourself in some fairly bizarre situations. This is the opening ceremony for one of our facilities there that involved a golden egg, Tony Blair, and the mayor of Shanghai. Not sure why, but it's one of those things you're standing in the room going, wow, is this a dream? Am I dreaming? So we've been able to sign two commercial deals, one with Bao Steel, who are the second largest steel makers in the world, another one with Shaogang, who are the 4th largest steel maker in China. And these led to the construction of pre-commercial demonstration facilities. The one that I showed you is one of those, but also later on to commercial facilities, and that's really the next journey for our company. We've got a lot of partnerships around the world. We've partnered very strongly with people in the feedstock end, so people with gas, basically. Doesn't sound good. So chemical industries, steel industries, oil refiners, but then also people in the market. We partner with airlines, with chemical groups who want to take our products, etc. So both, I guess, feedstock suppliers and people with a need to produce fuels and chemicals who recognize the need for those fuels and chemicals to be made from more sustainable sources, for those fuels and chemicals to have a minimal impact, or the production of those to have fuels and chemicals to have a minimal impact on the environment. So that's our story. That's LanzaTech. But I guess one of the things that I wanted to highlight today is my passion for innovation as a way of solving problems, as a way of modeling the future, if you like. And why New Zealand desperately needs innovation and desperately needs companies to start with innovative ideas. Not innovative ideas necessarily for New Zealand, innovative ideas for the world. And those innovative ideas can start in New Zealand and expand out. That's what I hope we've done. We haven't created a solution for New Zealand. We've created a global solution. In fact, our solution perhaps has some application here, but has enormous applications elsewhere. And so therefore, I'd encourage people to think about innovation as a global enterprise. You're starting a global company from day one. Why does New Zealand need innovation? This is a great example. So, sorry to bore you with some economics here, but these are exports per capita. So the amount of dollars that an individual person represents in terms of goods sold offshore. So in New Zealand, $9,000 per person is the exports per capita. Yeah. In Denmark, it's $26,000 per person. Denmark and New Zealand are about the same size, and we both make stuff from agriculture. About the same amount of stuff, as it turns out. So New Zealand and Denmark, about the same when it comes to growing grass, feeding it to animals, extracting the stuff, and selling it offshore. We're both good at that. Denmark, though, figured out that you can do more than that. You can also make things and sell it. You can also have a manufacturing and export industry locally. And that's something that we should do. That's something that we should be encouraging. And that's an area that New Zealand is really lagging behind, in my view. From my perspective, how I work to try and help grow innovative industries locally is through an organisation called the Ice House, based in Auckland. The Ice House really helps a range of businesses. Actually, most of the work they do is with small to medium-sized enterprises, but they also work with startups to help with networks, to help with funding, to help with education for people looking to grow ideas, to look at people looking to start innovative new businesses. So that's a group that I'm very passionate about helping. They've got a view that we need 3,000 new companies in New Zealand by 2020, and they want to be part of basically putting together the opportunity for for around 2,000 of those. Now, I'm going to finish on a couple of quotes. A lot of innovation seems unreasonable before it happens. It was really pretty unreasonable for us to think, maybe 15 years ago, that one could carry around a personal computer in your pocket that could connect you by video to someone on the other side of the world. But that's what we've got. It was completely unreasonable to think that people would get into buying bigger mobile phones than they had today. But that's what we did. It used to be that, I remember 12 years ago, I lived in Japan. Mobile phones were about that size in Japan at that time. And people were going, how can they get smaller? We wanted smaller. We wanted a pen. But no, they got bigger. You know, innovation is about the unreasonable. It's about making the unreasonable practical, making the unreasonable normal. And it's unreasonable people who defy what we see around us as being the status quo, defy the status quo, and make something new come about. The unreasonable, therefore all innovation depends on unreasonable people, people who are not satisfied with what they see around them. And that's a good thing, not being satisfied with what you see around you. I love this quote. The best way to predict the future is to invent it. We have to invent what tomorrow looks like. That's the only way we're going to have a tomorrow that we're happy with. We have to invent it. And at the moment, I think we're lagging behind in that challenge, particularly when it comes to the climate. I think that we, as a group of people in New Zealand or globally, have to take some responsibility and start to innovate fast in order to solve problems. At LanzaTech, what we're hoping to do is develop a process that allows industry to flourish, that allows nations to become energy secure, so energy becomes affordable, the democratization of energy, but also to allow these things in the context of sustainability, but also allows these things in the context of enabling food growth or land use for food production for our growing populations. That's it from me. Thank you.